Early warning. All right, so you can all hear me. So we are all good. Okay, Mbula Vinaka and Talo Falava, everyone, to all of you who are here in this room, here in Suva, Fiji, and all our family members who are joining across the region, and some of you around the world, actually. So, Talo Falava, and welcome to this session. So this is Learning Lab number 3, just to make sure you are in the right room. If you are in the wrong room, just stay. So this is an integrated approaches for disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. And my name is William Muyese. It's a long name, but you can just call me Willy. I'm from the University of Melbourne and also the University of South Pacific. Originally from Samoa, citizen of Tuvalu, lived and worked in Fiji for so many years, and now living in Victoria, Australia. So it's very good to be in Fiji now. It's kind of warm at the moment, so I'm in my territory. Okay, so just a couple of rules. If you have any question, you can put them in a chat. For those of you in the room, keep them to yourselves. You can ask them, you can bring your questions later. Okay, so I think we continue our session right now. So yeah, I'm Willy, and I have Anais and Libby here supporting me during this session. We also have Anna joining us online, but we will introduce her shortly. So this session is very important because we're going to look at the framework for resilience developments. As some of you are aware, that was endorsed by our leaders in 2016 with 3 very important key strategic goals. One was strengthened integration of adaptation and risk reduction. Second, look at low carbon development. And the third one, strengthen the disaster preparedness response and recovery. And these are very, very important strategic goals for our region. And it's mainly looking at way to integrate climate change and adaptation and climate change adaptation. It's very important guiding documents. And however, with 7 more years remaining till the end of the FRTP 2030, we're experiencing a lot of challenges and also recorded some of the progress along the way because of different ways and different actors, different modalities of operations. We also have different levels of challenges. And in this session, we're trying to have an interactive session to try to explore the fundamentals of integrations and some of the challenges faced in the operationalization and to investigate possible opportunities and solutions. We don't want to end it in a very negative note. We want to end it with some stories of successes. We are very positive people, as you can see in my very nice smile, that we will end with a success story from Vanuatu. So it's very important for us. We will have presentation, and then we will also have a slide moment. So take out your phone, turn it to the lowest of the volume, and prepare to answer the exercise there. But before that, we have a great presenter joining us online. We have Anna Saxby here with us. Anna, could you please wave? Yeah, that's Anna. And Anna is an executive at the Humanitarian Advisory Group, or HAG, leading on climate change and environmentally responsible programming, including the Humanitarian Horizons research stream, greening the system, anticipatory action work, and HAG's Beyond the Barriers research. Anna has over 20 years of combined development and humanitarian experience in Asia, Pacific, Africa, and Latin America, aka all around the world. Anna has worked with governments, UN agencies, development banks, and civil society organizations, and also academia. Anna, you also work with me on urban resilience, climate change adaptation, gender and social inclusion, participatory governance, and policy analysis. And Anna will share a short presentation, and then we'll have Slido. Then we'll go back to the presentation as we move along these flights. If you behave, we're not going to expect any turbulence. So without further ado, join me in welcoming Anna. And Anna, over to you now. I want to see some hands for those who are here and all of those who are joining us online. Thank you very much. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you, Vili. That was a lovely introduction. Just checking you can hear me before I talk too much.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yep.
Thank you, Anna.
Great. Thanks, Katie. Thanks so much, Vili, and thank you for the opportunity to present quickly today. As Vili said, this is both an opportunity to talk about integration, and we thought that a starting point may be to look at some research that the Humanitarian Advisory Group has done over the past couple of years, which has had a focus on integration, and then build some discussion around that. So I'm just going to give a really brief introduction to the research program, just so we're all on the same page when we get into some of the discussion, when we talk about things and you wonder where they came from. So there's a research program called Beyond Barriers, which explores pathways to overcoming siloed approaches to climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. So this research is part of the Humanitarian Partnership, the Disaster Ready program, which is supported by the Australian government, and we implement it by World Vision Australia and in partnership with us, the Humanitarian Advisory Group. Next slide, please. So the research is in two phases. We've finished phase one and we're now in phase two. So as part of phase one, we put together a series of case studies. So 6 case studies plus a report, which was a combination of all of them. And we're going to hear about a part of a case study later from the Vanuatu report. And the case studies looked at ways that exist and potential possibilities for agencies who are seeking to better integrate their disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation, governance, funding, coordination, and information management. And all those reports are available on our website. Next slide, please. So now we're into phase two, and we're shifting from trying to understand about integration to thinking about implementing, like what's the practical approach, what are some good ways to do this in practice. So the current questions that we're looking to answer are what works in practice for integration of climate change adaptation, disaster risk reduction, what approaches have the most impact, what approaches can be broadly applied that are replicable and scalable, and how can integration strengthen anticipatory action and disaster risk financing. So we are about to release a report next week after this Pacific Resilience meeting, which covers a lot of these topics as well and is the basis for some of the information today. Next slide, please. So according to the research, which was across 6 specific countries, which were mainly the countries where the Disaster Ready program operates in, plus Tonga. And as part of that, we asked questions around what integration looks like, what does it refer to? And what we found through the research is that, generally speaking, integration refers to combining disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation. This means combining interventions that address CCA and DRR with the intention of improving humanitarian and development outcomes for at-risk and crisis-affected populations. We do recognise that there are many different understandings of integration, but this is kind of a general one that we went with. And also we noted that these fields of climate change adaptation, disaster risk reduction have traditionally existed and operated as separate entities, both in the Pacific and globally as well. And there are many reasons for that, which we'll touch on a bit later in terms of financing structures and governance structures and regulatory environments, etc. And lastly, that in the Pacific, we found through the research that climate change is a key driver of many disasters, and there are growing calls for resilience programming to address the combined and integrated challenges of the two together. Next slide, and I'll hand over to you, Vili.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. As I said, this is interactive gender balance here, talking about here. So we do have a slide there. As Anna mentioned, we do have different meaning of integration from an academic perspective, from practitioner, operational level, but we're just asking you here, what does it mean for you? When I say you, meaning you, our participants who are listening to me right now. How about you here in the room? You want to voice out what does it mean? One or two? Loud? What comes on the top of your mind when you hear the word integration? Okay, we have compromise. Coming here sounds like a marriage of convenience. Yeah. Yep, efficiency. That's very good. Designing interventions that have outcomes for both, a more holistic and coordinated approach, parts of daily life, cross-cutting issues, all considered, pulling common themes together and implementing together, inclusivity, collaboration, improvement, avoiding duplication. It's very interesting from your perception of the word integration or the approach to integration. There are two important things coming here. One is the purpose of integration, to improve efficiency, to overcome overlaps, to coordinate itself, and also how to do it. So there are a lot of examples coming here: inclusivity, togetherness in action, two birds with one stone. Sounds like Jesus. So it's very, very interesting to hear this. There is a common and basic understanding of integration. We'll give you 30 more seconds to provide. And this is really interesting because this is why it's also difficult. When we talk about integration, and sometimes it's also very hard to define it because it has a bit different meaning to different organizations and for different purposes. Sometimes there is an argument between academia and practitioner of what integration really means or what it looks like. So it's really important to see there is a very good intention here of what's the purpose of integration and also how to do integration. But it's important as well in this session to see what it actually looks like and whether it's working or not. So I think that is really cool. Thank you very much for the spirit of integration. You're integrating yourself into the session, and thank you for providing all your feedbacks. Really, really, really good one. Thank you. So I think that is very important. So we move on again, Anna.
Thanks, Billy. The next part of the research is we looked at trying to understand both the barriers and opportunities for integration. So the first thing we looked at was trying to understand the barriers, what hinders integration, what makes it difficult and challenging. And there's a number of things, but throughout the research, 3 overarching themes came out quite strongly, probably more strongly than other themes, which are on your screen at the moment. So the first one was around siloed ways of working, remain prominent across the Pacific. And this related to effective data and information sharing, especially across government ministries and implementing agencies. Also, this related to international funding mechanisms and the fact that a lot of donors and funding mechanisms operate in a very siloed way. The second one was around a lack of two-way information exchange, which limits opportunities for community participation and leadership in decision-making processes. And the research found that community voices and first responders to emergencies were often excluded from decision-making. and that their processes and systems often prevented the elevation of traditional knowledge into decision-making forums. The third barrier that was quite prominent was around coordination and coherence between stakeholders, which is often lacking. And this related to the research found there's a large number of frameworks, initiatives, and bodies involved in both DRR and CCA, which makes the space complex and coordinating challenges for the large number of stakeholders, and that there is also a lack of resources to carry out the wide-ranging demands. So that's a bit of an overview of what the research found, and I'll hand it back to you, Philly.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Another set of questions, and it's really interesting because we're bringing the perspective from the research, and then it's good to have a moment to reflect on this. And I think the question here is, what barriers do you face or anticipate in the process of integration? Because that's from the research findings based on their data collection from the sources they spoke to. But I'm giving you the opportunity to share yours from this room, or you agree with it, or you have a completely different barrier we have never heard of before. This is your moment, or hold it for a long time. I think thank you very much for bringing it on. So that's very good. Not having access to information, different
Resources game.
Yeah, resources, different priorities.
You want to read it?
There's a whole essay of barriers coming in as well, which is good. Keep it coming. That's the spirit. Really like that. Faces various challenges in different time scales, objective resource constraints, data caps, institutional policy obstacles, capacity and community engagement issues. Absolutely true.
Your students, really.
That's probably essay 101 for one of my students. That's very good. Yeah. So could you please say, yeah. Yeah, that's very good. Yeah.
Well, there's a concern around securitization, which is the increasing use of military and police and so forth in responding to climate change. They're very frequently used in DRM. We've worked with them very closely over the years in disaster response, but folks that have been more focused on climate change adaptation may not be used to working with those groups and may be hesitant to do so. So there just may be some cultural differences that should bring it together.
Yeah, thank you. And could you please introduce yourself?
Sorry, I'm Ryan McLean. I'm a climate change advisor for the New Zealand Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ryan. That's true. Because in some of these things, we're trying to find a common purpose between the two, DRM and climate change adaptation, different roles and different purposes. So we're trying to find the common purposes for some of the institutions that have different terms of references, different operational guidelines that they have, and they have different boundaries. And sometimes those boundaries are the ones that force the silos. But I think, yeah, it's very interesting. Thank you very much for bringing all those wonderful details of barriers, and they are still coming. And now I see there are more barriers than our understanding of integration. But that is good. The more barriers, the better, because that means we are trying. We only know we have barriers because we try. Yeah. Some are still in the dinosaur age.
Fear of change.
Yeah, fear of change equals lack of political will. Wow. Anna, did you see this diversity of barriers when you did the research?
Some of them, but definitely not that many. I was thinking perhaps we should have just come to this session and captured all the views and then written the report instead.
I think we have just opened up something. But this is the reality we are in. And I think this speaks to the complexity of the field of integration, because when we say or we call for to integrate, and we have a very beautiful framework that put that as strategic goal, and then we have a bit of limits and of operationalization guide or roadmap of how to actually do it, and then the different perspectives of integration, and then there are also different scales and levels, and then all of these barriers come about. So I think this is really really good for us to explore. But I really feel sorry for those of you who are working in the integration. Now I have more respect for you. I think we are all in this together. So that's a good thing. Okay, so is there any additional points from this room here in Suva? Because I'm looking at experts of integration in this room. Yeah. Okay, so we can leave that for the discussion a bit later. So Anna, can you please move on to the next part of your presentation? As you can see now, we bring in like a salu-salu. We bring some of these flowers and then we stop, we weave other type of flowers and then we go back to it. So we're mixing it up like a hip hop song. Over to you, Anna. Thank you.
I do like the hip hop song analogy, Billy. Thank you. Yeah, and really, really great to see all those different barriers. And I'm interested to see what comes out next as well, because after barriers, we of course then looked at opportunities, looking at what could be done, how to address the barriers that did come out. And we've come out with, from the research, 6 main opportunities. And the first one is around long-term partnerships and trust, a key to building sustainable change. And that partnerships are underpinned by trust, which can enable knowledge sharing and peer-to-peer learning. This came out as probably one of the biggest things, that partnerships and trust were central to everything and a really important part of integration. The second opportunity was around champions of change. So identifying those most influential people who can drive conversations and messaging around community-led resilience and integration. And that can really support progress. So they don't necessarily always have to be leaders or managers or the most senior people, but those really influential people who can drive that messaging around integration. The third opportunity we identified was around effective communication practices, which are essential for coordination and collaboration, and ensuring that information is streamlined, accessible, and consistent across communication channels came out as a really important point. So making sure that different organizations and ministries are aligning their information as well around integration and coordination. Next slide, please. Number 4 was that traditional knowledge can guide and support approaches to building resilience and supporting integration, and that including traditional knowledge, practices, and values alongside scientific knowledge can support integration of DRR and CCA. Number 5 is that there is a need to ensure that staff are better resourced and supported, and that this includes training, relevant resources, and also the time to carry out the increasing number of CCA and DRR initiatives, and that integration is possible when staff are properly resourced and supported. And lastly, an opportunity was that international funding mechanisms and donor priorities must shift to better support integration. So instead of siloed CCA and DRR mechanisms, donors should work with Pacific governments and regional stakeholders to ensure that financial structures support integration. Over to you, Billy.
I mentioned earlier, we are quite positive. We should have a positive ending of this. And as we looked at the barriers, it's quite obvious there are categories there. And some of those barriers are just human nature, such working with each other. Some of them are organizational barriers. Some of them are resources barriers. And it's really good to hear that Anna has brought up some of these solutions that are trying to help or to overcome some of these institutional barriers. Or sometimes it's just personalities. Sometimes here in the Pacific is who you know. And sometimes you build a relationship for 20 years and one person just come in and say the wrong thing, that thing collapses. And then they will never speak to you for the next 100 years. Their children and their grandchildren will never talk to you again. So we have a Slido session now. What might be some opportunities in your context? This is really important because it's context specific. Because sometimes we overgeneralize things, but context matter. Sometimes we think that it's a good practice that can work in one area, then we think we can just apply that in another area without understanding the context, because that context could become a barrier of its own. But it's really good to see the opportunities that are coming in. Yep, have an open and frank discussion like what we are doing right now. That honesty, but sometimes our culture is also barrier that, because sometimes we have reputational cultures and we want to please. Sometimes you don't want to tell the chief off. The good thing is I'm a chief, so don't tell me off. So we have policy link and coordination, the foreign affairs. So this is really, really interesting. And it's interesting to see the opportunities are targeting different levels as well. There are some opportunities here looking at governments and some even the youth, the champions. And sometimes our youth are not just the leaders for tomorrow, you are the leaders for today. If you remember the McDonald's strategy, the small kid can take his parents, his whole grandparents, and the whole family to McDonald's. So I'm sure you are also the leaders of today, not to McDonald's, but to integrate and build the resilience of our communities. So I think these are really good. Is there anyone who wants to speak about some of these critical opportunities or what you see? Something unique or an example? While there is a question here, do we think FRDB as a mechanism has influenced or addressed some of these barriers? So for those of you who are online, that's your assignment for the next 1 minute. And for those of you who are in front of me, we need a microphone. I see some are really excited to break the barriers. Go ahead, Dave. Please introduce yourself first. Thank you.
Thank you, Billy. Yeah, Dave Hebblethwaite from the Pacific community. There's great dialogue in the background there. One of the things that we've seen as more attention is focused on climate change and disaster, and climate and disaster financing increases, we find that sectors that are used to dealing with an issue are now having to share that issue with others in government. As that integration happens, some of the sectors, whether it be energy or health or water, perhaps letting go of some of the leadership they had in that space because it's a central national issue. So we've found there's some really great opportunities to involve the sectors in dialogue on resilience. Some of that happened this week, and we've had just great feedback, say from the water sector, and the involvement in this sort of forum, which they're not necessarily always involved in. So great opportunities to engage, not just between the disaster and the climate change communities, but with the sectors out there, the technical sectors. There's a lot of benefit to be made if we seize those opportunities.
Thank you. Dave, totally agree. And this is, when we speak of integration, it's an ongoing thing, and it's an opportunity to increase that conversation and action, not just to talk, because sometimes we're tired of talking. We need action. So that's really good to mobilize, also call for action. Anyone more from this group? Okay, we have one more here. I am still reading your answers on Slido, so I'm not ignoring you all. But all the solutions that you are providing are really, really good, effective partnership and the need of youth and leaders in resilience. That's really good. Systemic approach.
Hi, thanks panel. Thanks everyone. My name is Marilyn Cornelius, and I represent the consulting community. Currently, I'm part of a midterm review of the FRDP, and I'm just curious, what would you say are the best opportunities for the FRDP to achieve integration and to bridge any gaps that there might be in actually bringing that integration to national and subnational levels, all the way down to community level?
Asking me the question, or is that a question you are asking our participants?
I'm asking everyone.
Okay, you're asking everyone. Okay, that's another assignment for you in the next 30 seconds. So we will come to that question again, I think at the end. And also for those of you online, there is a question there. Do we think FRDP as a mechanism has influenced or addressed the barriers? So there are a lot of answers online right now. If you can read, they are attempting to answer your question as well as the question online. So much richness of information and expertise online now. Okay, so we move on to the final couple of slides from Anna, just to provide a case study from Vanuatu before we open it again for a couple of minutes more and wrap up this session. Thank you very much. Over to you, Anna.
Thanks, Billy. So yeah, I'm just going to talk quickly about a case study from Vanuatu, which was highlighted during the first phase of our research. I also just want to flag I am not from Vanuatu, and I recognise that there are many more people in the room and online today who have far more experience in this particular topic than I. So just flagging that I am doing my best. Bear with me. So as part of the research, it found that, you know, due to Vanuatu's high exposure to hazards and risks of disaster management has long been a priority of the national government. Governance of disaster and climate change is fully integrated within Vanuatu, and the government chose to pursue an integrated strategy with the establishment of the National Advisory Board on Climate Change and Disaster Risk Reduction, the NAB, in 2012. So prior to 2012, Vanuatu had two separate government entities governing climate change and DRR, the National Advisory Committee on Climate Change and the National Task Force on Disaster Risk Reduction. The integration of these traditionally separated entities was facilitated by the acknowledgement of the overlaps between CCA and DRR. Integration of governance served to enhance efficiency, strengthen coordination, improve the allocation of resources, and reduce duplication of efforts to ensure a more streamlined process for addressing national priorities. This national structure helps to support integrated mechanisms at the provincial and local levels. Next slide, please. As you can see in this diagram, the Ministry of Climate Change, Adaptation, Meteorology, Geohazards, Environment, Energy and Disaster Management, the MOCC, is the ministry responsible for resilient development in Vanuatu. The National Advisory Board on Climate Change and Disaster Risk Reduction was established under the MOCC as the overarching policy-making and advisory body for all DRR and climate change programs, projects, initiatives and activities. The NAB develops all DRR and climate change policies and guidelines and positions and acts as a focal point for information, including coordination and national climate finance processes. The Department of Climate Change also sits within the MOCC. As stipulated in its Meteorological, Geological Hazards and Climate Change Act number 25 of 2016, the DOCC is tasked with the coordination and implementation of all climate change adaptation, climate change mitigation and DRR activities throughout the country, and acts as the focal point for achieving resilient development across all levels and sectors of the government. The DOCC and NAB have complementary roles and work together to ensure Vanuatu's policy on climate change and DRR is mainstreamed across the policy of all sectors. The National Disaster Committee also sits within the MOCC. The National Disaster Committee serves to advise government agencies on disaster risk management, including planning, preparation, preparedness, and response. The body also oversees implementation of disaster risk management policies implemented by the NDMO, government agencies, partner agencies, civil society, and the private sector. The NDMO works closely with the NDC, and the NDMO is responsible for the coordination of responses to emergencies and disasters across Vanuatu. The NDMO also plays an important role in preparedness and lists one of its key objectives as integrating the coordination of DRR and CCA into sectoral plans, policies, and budgeting across all levels, nationally, provincially, and locally. At the subnational level, the provincial disaster and climate change committees have been established to coordinate DRR and CCA activities, develop plans, and disseminate information to communities. Additionally, the NDMO, in partnership with NGOs and the Red Cross, has supported the establishment of community disaster and climate change committees across the country to further support communities to be actively engaged in recognising, assessing, and mitigating risks. At the national level, DRR and CCCA information and activities are coordinated by the NAB and the DOCC. The NAB plays a largely technical oversight role in coordination and acts as a focal point for information sharing. The DOCC is mandated to coordinate and monitor all climate change and DRR projects across the country and to secure future climate change and DRR projects and funding. And this coordination role is supported by the NDMO, which works to connect and strengthen the disaster and climate change network at national, provincial, and community levels. Thanks, Vili. Back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anna, for sharing that excellent example from Vanuatu. And congratulations to Vanuatu and all the partners who and everybody who who's involved in doing that. I think it's good to see the development of the integration at different levels is happening as well. And thank you for doing the research as well on that. You and your partners, Anna, I think Bianco. Oh, it's good we have Siale here with us. We have Siale here, and so she can answer a lot of other questions if anyone is asking questions here. Okay, so there is a very good discussion on the chat. And thanks, Katie, for bringing the two important points there, bringing forward that we do have resilience standards that have been developed in order to try to understand and evaluate, and then trying to look at how to operationalize FRTP and collect some of those important cases. And also pointing the audience to the Pacific Resilience Partnership, the different working groups that are working, they're trying to bring different actors together. So there are mechanisms and a goodwill happening at the moment. And this platform where myself and all of us are sitting and talking is one of the examples of that. So thank you very much, Katie, for bringing that. We have two hands that are waving now. We have Marika and then followed by Phil. Marika, can you hear me? Kevin, you also asked a question on chat. I saw someone answer that as well. So, Marika, can you hear me? Your hand is up. Okay, Phil, can you hear me, Phil? Okay, Marika, I saw you put down your hand and now you put it back up. Oh, you can't turn on your mics.
Hi, if you'd like to join virtually and have your microphone on, please raise your hand and I will ask you to turn your microphone on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Katie. We have Marika, who really wants to share something. And then we have Phil, who will follow Marika. If that's okay, Katie. Marika, can you unmute your microphone now, please? Okay, while Marika is working on unmuting the microphone, don't know if Phil is there, or is there anyone here who wants to share some thoughts about this? What's your question again? Yeah, there were a lot of inputs. Is there a way we can collate some of those inputs on the slider?
Yep,
Thank you.
So that's ready.
Yeah, so all of the inputs on Slido will be documented and distributed. They will be used for the review. Okay, so the floor is still open if there is any other question or comments from Suva. From online. We also have a person who's joining from Istanbul. What's the time there in Istanbul? I love your commitment. Thank you. Yeah, there's really good discussion happening on chats, and it's really good.
You want to see the slide, or it's okay?
Yeah. So I think is there any other person raising the hand on online, please? Okay. So I think that is very important for us to have this discussion, and I'm sorry that we cannot open the floor more for discussion because of the time limits. I know that it must be early morning in Istanbul, and it's almost 3 o'clock here in Suva. It's going to 4 in Samoa, so we do have some time differences, and there is another part of the meeting coming up after this. But I think I just want to sum up. I was thinking of what's the important letter. When I sum up things, I usually think of what's the key letter that the words will come from. And then I remember that we are in a World Cup mode. And I just watched the OC Rules Grand Final in Melbourne. That's a bad team that won that one. And then I thought, okay, maybe I'll bring the H because it's like the coal post. And then I know that in all the discussions we have and all the important contribution, it's just like we all want a holistic approach. We want to bring everything together and look at different risk spectrum and approach things not just from disaster, climate change, but also working together, all the other level of risks. And then we also, I also look at this, there is also a need to harmonize systems. Sometimes others are going far different ways than others, but we need just to bring them together and harmonize the processes. And when we say harmonize, sometimes when we talk alignment, when we talk integration, some people say that we align, we come closer. But I think from this session and until forever, when we integrate, we weave, we harmonize, we hold each other like a mat. We don't just come and pump the shoulders and say goodbye, because we build this based on very strong relationships. But we also recognize it's very hard. It's a complex system. So that's one of our other H we have to take. It's hard, but we remain hopeful. Because I think the alternative, I don't see any other alternative, but for us to try to work together to integrate for the purposes we all agree on, as per the Slido content there. And then the other H we have to, because I think it's important for our communities, because at a community level, it's already integrated. Like there is no sectoral there. The same people working there, but it's sometimes there is a division up at the national level or subnational level or regional level or the UN level. Sometimes it goes all the way up, but finding the way to work together, even when we talk about the Sendai, it's different. Paris Agreement, SDG. But I think it's very brave for the Pacific to recognize the need to integrate and come together. And then that leads to the final one. And somebody put there that integration is like a hot pot of cultural soup. That's the last H, because it's not easy, but we are hopeful, but we also have to be mindful of the reality we are operating in. There are different cultures, different personalities coming together. It's not easy, but it can be done. And then we have shown the case of Vanuatu, and I'm sure there are great practitioners in this room and also online, the experts who are working together to improve and keep on strengthening the integration process and operationalize and improve the standards of to measure the success of the FRTP. finally, as we move along, what I think this session, when we talk about the integration, we're not looking at a perfect type of integration. I remember Ben Ryan, the famous coach for Fiji that won the gold medal. He was lucky because Samoa was not qualified at that time, did not qualify. Otherwise, Fiji wouldn't get it closer to the gold medal. He was talking about beautiful chaos. The lack of integration is chaotic. And integration is, I think it's not making the chaos disappear, because it will always be there, the complexity will be there, but how we will make this chaos beautiful and how we will operate or operationalize with different partners, different cultures, and then we come together and make it a beautiful chaos. Like how the rugby players in Fiji, they run all different angles, but they already knew where they were going. And I think having a system in place and improving the communications, coordinations, and the partnerships that we have, it starts from us, the people. If we can work together, I'm sure we can make it happen. Personalities, really, really important as well. I'm speaking from an academic perspective because I'm from the USP as well, and we have a postgrad diploma program that integrates climate change and disaster risk management. And sometimes we have a lot of infighting in academia. Even trying to define one term, we never agree. But in the practical sense of things, when we have climate change adaptation and disaster risk management, we also argue about the term mitigation. So we call that Babylonian confusion. We confuse on the use of some of these things, but we agree to work together and make it happen for a common purpose. And I think it's really important as well, while we are working to weave these mats and make our chaos beautiful, we have to recognize it's everybody's responsibility, and it's all up to us to do it. So now there is no more question. There's a compliment for me. So thank you for the compliments, but I'm not going to look at that. Yeah, so I really appreciate the opportunity, and thanks to the organizers for the opportunity for me to moderate this session. I'm very proud of the work that all the partners are doing, and all of you are doing. Yes, we have a lot of barriers, but you are champions who work together to lift those. And it's not going to get easier, but we are stronger people. We are very resilient as well. So thank you very much to the organizers, and thank you to the Pacific Resilience Partnership, the working groups, for this opportunity. And thanks to all of you who are here. Sorry we don't have any afternoon tea for you in this room, but maybe for those of you joining online, thank you very much to all our families and our relatives, including our family members in Istanbul. Thank you very much for your commitment. So that's all for today, and we'll keep integrating. Thank you very much for the opportunity.